Please take seats up in the front row, because every seat will be taken plus overflow. So please fill in. You get your two shoes in the front row. Daniel, front row. Yes, front row. Help us fill in the front row. How's everybody doing today? It's got to be louder than that, or the people in the other room aren't going to come over here. So how's everybody doing today? That's better. Thank you all for coming out on this rainy, bad traffic night. It's phenomenal to see so many people interested in what happens after Techstars. We've actually been operating the incubator since late March, but we're so busy dealing with the refugees that we haven't had a minute to come out and tell the world or even update the website about everything that's going on here. So thank you for coming tonight. We're going to get deep into what we're doing with the incubator. And also for those of you, how many of you have never been to venture mechanics before? Yeah, it's a majority of the room. That's great. So welcome. How are we doing out there, Terry? Or should I get started? Or they're just chowing down. Okay. Well, there will be plenty of chow, wine, beer, drinks, and all that stuff, and networking afterwards. That's the funnest part of going out to these events, after all, as you know. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump in. All right. So the plan today, after some introductions and thanking our sponsors, I'm going to get into how we ended up evolving the incubator. For those of you who don't know, I'm Ron Wiener, by the way. 40 years of doing tech startups. This is number 10. I've had 3 incubators in the 4. I don't count those as jobs, but this one I do because it's tail wag the dog pretty quickly. And it's 80 to 100 hour a week venture at this point. So I might as well call it one of the startups. And we are going to hear about what we learned in those other instantiations. The 3 previous versions of Venture Mechanics, 2 were in Portland, 1 was here 13 years ago. They were Venture Studios model, meaning we sort of like Pioneers for Labs, we incubate our own ideas. The difference is that when we pick the one that we really like the best, we close down the other companies and turn the building into the headquarters of the newly funded startup. I did 5 companies that way as CEO. It was a very, very different model. It was also a very different time. I never saw a woman or a person of color walk in the door 13 years ago. It is now 80% of what we see. And as you'll hear from Jamar Montgomery later, we've suddenly totally organically, unscripted, have become a center for DEI. About 80% of the founders and nearly 100% of the venture funds that are visiting here 1 or 2 a day at this point. So word's getting around, and it's becoming an amazing community, as you'll see some examples of. So that's exciting and very different. And you may have noticed the signs on the door. We opened this place in August as a co-working facility for venture-grade startups. That didn't happen as you might imagine, startups today are working from home and they come here and they rent our conference rooms. So we converted the private offices to conference rooms. They're either meeting as a team or they're meeting with investors or mentors. And so that was kind of wake up call. We pivoted rather quickly to events, and then events shot off. We just added another 12 today. We're over 100, somewhere between 160 and 200 of our own produced events, plus a lot of third-party events, be it an M&A conference or whatever somebody's putting on, a technology conference. This room is full a lot. And so the events took off, and then we were working on an incubator concept, as you'll see, doing some testing. We wanted to test the ratios of mentors to entrepreneurs. So we said, well, what happens if you put 2 mentors on 1 entrepreneur at the same time? You're going to get a better result. What happens if you do 3? We ended up doing 8 on 1 when Techstars blew up, February 21st. And so we flipped the script all the way. As you'll see, the mentor conclave concept is founders at the podium, mentors in the audience. Similar to Creative Destruction Labs, if you know that group, but that's one of many elements that's different about what we're doing. Based on testing, we were planning to launch the incubator by the end of the year. We had to rapidly accelerate that. It took us about 4 weeks to get it done and take the first company in. And you're going to hear from the mentor, the first entrepreneur, and then you're going to hear from a couple of our mentors. And then we're going to get into a whole bunch of event announcements, just so you get an idea, those of you who are new here, what kind of things we have scheduled out of those 200 events. And then it's going to be party time. I'm going to say it now, and I'll say it again at the end. The mentors in the room, how many of you are mentors? Quite a few. Okay. You're going to be relegated to the room right behind that wall for your own little meetup. You are allowed out of the pen at some point. Want you to meet each other, basically, if you haven't already met. And then the rest of the folks will be in that room where we were all congregating, where the food is, and sponsors, and first couple of companies in the incubator are going to be over there. So most important piece of information, if you've never been here, is the ADA restrooms that way. There's 2 and then 2 more restrooms that way. Don't panic. We have 2 routers up now. If you need internet access, the password. Okay. So I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors. Without sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do events for $20. They're key to making this whole thing happen. So I want to give a shout out to some of them and maybe have them, if they're in the room, stand up and say something about themselves quickly. Start with Brooks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brooks Lindsay. I'm the founding attorney of Light Legal. And let's see, about Light Legal quickly. I'll just say it's an outside general counsel law firm for founders and startups. The idea is to be as lean as possible, as lean and startups are. Lead startups where they are. And that way, I was a founder for 5 years at the tech company. And so I approach legal services with a founder's mindset. I hope that resonates. I just want to say huge congrats to Ron. He has filled a void in this community. And I participated with him, co-led the startup bootcamp with Venture Mechanics here, and very good success. I think maybe some good insights for the incubator. But I just want to say to everyone here, if you raise your hand and get involved with Venture Mechanics, I promise you will see a great return on investment, a karmic return on investment, and building out this startup ecosystem. It is important for all of us to take a big role in doing that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes. Brooke was my doppelganger doing Startup Bootcamp, which was our experimentation lab for what had become the incubator. Let's see, who else? Is Terry in the room? Oh, right? You want to say something? Raise your hand.
Well, you said it's...
Oh, yeah. Sure. Okay, go for it.
I have a quick thing later. That's why so this will be quick too. So I'm the founder of New Tech Northwest. We're a community of 60,000 technologists in the Seattle area. We've been around about 12 years now. And we do our East Side events here. And just to piggyback on what Brooks just said, Ron's filled a huge void here, in multiple voids actually, and the one I care about the most is the community. That there really isn't an impact hub galvanized place in the Puget Sound now besides this. So Seattle people need to be here more because this is the place to really connect with people to move your tech careers and your companies further.
And free
which is pretty much what we do. And free parking. Can't find that anywhere. Which is what New Tech's about. So if you want to learn more about New Tech, go to newtechnorthwest.com or talk to me or Ron. Very proud sponsor, friend, and partner. So thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Brett. 11 years ago or something, 10 years ago, I got up on stage at the Kirkland Performing Arts Center and I walked on the treadmill desk because Brett had one of his New Tech meetings, and it was just to show off new technology in the city. And if you've walked the building, you know we have about 15 treadmill desks in the building here. And I was an early adopter and got into the business of manufacturing them. So gave me a lift way back then, and we were super happy to have Brett relaunch the East Side chapter after closed for COVID. And what have we done? 8 or 9 of them already, something like that. So please do check out a New Tech event if you ever get a chance. It's a lot of fun. Any other sponsors in on? Oh, there he is.
Hello. Hey guys, I'm Joel, CEO of Field Labs. We actually office here in Venture Mechanics. If you're at a stage where you're ready to start building your MVP or looking into that, please come and see us. We're a software development agency. We also help with UX design and strategy and process. So please come and see us.
By virtue of the fact that they're here in this building, they specialize in the early stage companies. Are there any customers who were launched by Yo?
My beacon.
Say hi.
Hi. Check out my Beacon app, available on app stores.
That's my first. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Seriously, do check it out. Yeah, the guy from Bernstein called a few minutes ago saying his wife is going into labor, so he's not. But Bernstein, for those of you who actually, it's a good time to bring up a point, which is we're probably the only incubator in the world that trains CEOs not just on all the things they really don't want to learn about, but have to, taxes and legal and HR and all that kind of stuff. But we actually teach them wealth management. And Bernstein is one of those partners that teaches wealth management to founders. Why? I am the poster child. Had a startup idea. You guys remember .com? 18 months from concept to $100 million exit. Next morning, got 23 FedExes from wealth managers from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all these guys. And their first questions were, you idiot. You literally didn't know you're supposed to make maneuvers when you start your company so that you don't pay these millions of taxes. Congratulations, you bought a highway in Oregon. So I learned my lesson the hard way. And I do meet entrepreneurs every day, and I ask them just for shits and giggles, do you know what a wealth manager is? What? You need to. But we actually train them on this stuff. So the way I put it to them is like, you can build a company twice as big, sell for twice as much money, or you can make some maneuvers early on and make the same amount of net capital gains at the end. So we do teach that. So Bernstein is one of those. And TriNet is Terry. Nope, in the other room. Okay. All right. They're all the sponsors have tables over there where all the food is. See how that works. So please do spend some time with them. All right. This is my favorite startup meme. You are trying to defy physics as a startup. You have so many headwinds, and you got to get catapulted along there. So, unless you were, what was that TV show, Dukes of Hazzard? Right? They could make that. But otherwise, what purpose do incubator accelerators serve in the market? And by the way, difference between an incubator and an accelerator is not black and white. If you try to Google this, you'll see what I found, which is it's a very loose definition. But fundamentally, incubator is sort of the beginning of the process where you're trying to really figure out if everything that needs to be there to create a viable business is there. And the accelerator end is as you travel through that process, figuring out that, okay, we've got an MVP, we've got early revenues, let's go fundraising. So sometimes you've already had a pre-seed round or some friends and family round, and then you get revenue, and then you're going out for a seed round, so you're going out for more funding, and you need the accelerator to help you with those final steps. And no one is born knowing all this stuff. It's really amazing. And man is the only creature that can learn from the mistakes of others, but often refuses to. That's one of our mantras here, right? Is like, yeah, people traveled this path before, and they're actually willing to give you their time and help you avoid the mistakes that they've made. So that's what mentorship is all about. And we're very happy to have something like a couple of hundred mentors at this point in our program that do that. Why do they do that? They have different motivations for doing that. Some of them, they're fractional something, fractional general counsel, fractional marketing person or accountant or what have you. And this is how they find clients, by mentoring. You know, they try to find somebody they have simpatico with, and then maybe they'll get hired. Some of them are retired, keep the edge sharp, and just enjoy hanging around startups. And I just turned 60 on Friday. Most people guess 45 to 50. This is what hanging around youthful exuberance does, right? So, and some are investors and they're looking for early investing opportunities if we join boards or whatever. But whatever the motivation is, they're all here to help these companies figure it out. So when I looked at all the other incubator accelerators, including my three previous ones, but the current crop that started around 2007, 8 with YC and Techstars, they all kind of focus on each other and copy each other. So I'm going to say some things here that may not apply to all of them, but apply to most of them. 90 days is the typical deal, right? It's a cohort. There's a start date. You got to wait for that start date. You got to move to the city where it's going to be. And in 90 days, you're going to be out. And what happens during that 90 days? You get a sprinkling of mentors. So I was a mentor at Founder Institute when it first started out. And I called the day where I said, I'm out. I don't understand this. I have no idea what the other mentors are teaching. I don't know if they're getting a complete curriculum. I sense that they're not because there's no synchronization between the mentors. I hear this all the time from people who've done Techstars and other mentor programs. I don't know if I'm giving conflicting information, and I don't know if I'm giving redundant information. But I do know that when I go through these things as an entrepreneur, I don't appreciate that, right? You go to one group and they say, oh, no, we don't do safes. We only do convertible notes. Then you go to the next angel group across the street and they say, oh, no, it's the other way around. What is an entrepreneur supposed to do with all this conflicting information? They said the painted blue. I painted the blue. I came back and said, no, I should have painted the pink. Okay? So the value of having mentors synchronize from the very beginning with a new company, that's a fundamental pillar of our incubator model, so that you're getting every piece of training that you need. Our goal is founders come in here inexperienced. Maybe they've done one company before, maybe even two, but they weren't the one who took care of taxes or whatever it is. They're usually at Bellevue, the technology people, not always, but we want to train the whole team up and make sure that they're going to return capital to their investors. That's how the whole ecosystem works. And so one of the problems that results, what has happened is it's become a numbers game. As these incubators got bigger and bigger and bigger, they stopped doing all the hard work with the startups. I haven't seen an exit slide on a Techstars demo day yet in years. And it used to be, you go on Shark Tank, you're going to say, I don't see I got my money back out, so I'm out. It used to be a finished business plan, had an exit strategy, did a lot of analytics. You figured out who's going to buy you, what they were going to pay to acquire you, and how you design your company to fit as the perfect jewel in their crown. And that's how the investors are going to get their money back 98% of the time. There's no IPOs going on. Even when there are, it's still a few percentage points. It's exits are acquisitions. How do you fit in? If you don't have that in your mind ahead of time, you're building a road to nowhere. At Top Gun for Startups, you'll hear about later, we teach disciplines we picked up in the cockpit as they apply to startups. And where am I? Where am I going? How am I going to get there? is a tape recording. You repeat every day. You wake up in the morning as a CEO, and that's the tape recording. Well, if you don't know where you're going, what is this path that you're taking? And we see that all the time, a meandering path. Oh, this one customer told us that it would be better to do this. No customer discovery process, just let's shift over because we got one customer telling us something. So you really need to know first where you're exiting to before you even start the business. And that's something we do here with the startups when they come in. Literally one of the first things we do, you'll hear from Brian. Brian in the room? Brian Tober? Yeah. Go from Brian. First time we sat down, after he joined the incubator, we spent quite a bit of time talking about what is the exit strategy, what are the kinds of companies that can buy you, building that slide first. It's the last slide in your deck. You build it first, right? But of course, they take a big equity grab, typically 6 to 20%, for the privilege of having some mentors sprinkled on you for 90 days. That's, to me, it's a crime. And more importantly, to institutional investors, they view that as a sign that, oh, you're a first timer, you don't even know what you're doing, your odds are low. The odds are low because this is that out. So we got a lot of unprepared companies who then pop incubators. I opened the doors here on August 23rd, and I immediately started getting phone calls from companies currently in a cohort somewhere saying, can we come to your incubator after we're done here? We didn't even have it up yet, but we had it on the menu on the website, right? And I'm like, why do you want to do that? You should be one and done. And then I see that routinely. We've done 4 accelerators and have applied to do more. Like that's some kind of milestone. It's not. It means you have not been fully baked. So we'll never let a company out of here that isn't fully baked because we'll never let a company out of here that isn't fully funded. That's the end of our process is you've closed your round. And then you can graduate if you want to, or you can stick around in the program until your next round. The access to mentors and the access to the investment community that we create here is something that ends at 90 days, sometimes another 90 days. There's an extension, but that's it. So anyhow, what are we doing that's different? So first of all, we're asynchronous. What does that mean? No cohorts. You start the day you're ready. And sometimes we're talking to the company for months before they're ready. And we will give them feedback and say, listen, you got to do a lot more customer discovery. 9 out of 10 companies, literally 9 out of 10, we say you need to do more customer discovery and prove to us that we should be taking our mentors' precious time on your deal. We have to convince ourselves, our threshold. I will tell you that the last 23 graduates of Techstars, that maybe 1 or 2 of them we would have taken it. Right? We've got to be convinced that they're fundable. And so we make them do a lot of homework. And you'll see the process here in a second. To come back to us and to convince us that hey, there's a market here, you guys are the ones to go after it, and investors will fund it. I'll make calls to socialize the concept with real investors before letting them in, just to make sure that it's not just us getting really excited about it, but investors actually will be excited. And then we assign a quarterback to that company. So the quarterback is there to make sure they check in a couple of times a week. How are you doing with your mentors? How are you doing with your own due diligence? Okay, let's set you up for the next one. So has anybody here ever been to the Mayo Clinic? You have. Okay. So you probably got like quarterback position when you first get them. And then they send you off to specialists. And you check back in with the specialist and they explain to you what the other specialist with your primary care, your primary physician, your internist. And then they explain what the specialist told them and say, okay, tomorrow we're going to have you do these tests and go to those specialists, right? So we do kind of the same thing, except at the beginning of the process, we do it in what we call a conclave, which is that room up front over there where there's 15 desks, so up to 15 mentors or the founders at the front of the room. So you're getting all the specialists in the room at the same time. That's the difference. And as we were upping you're going to hear from Jamar, who did a boot camp with Brooks, here where we had 8 mentors to 1 founder, 2 founders, but we split the meeting in half. So 8 mentors and 1 founder. And Leslie couldn't be here tonight, but she called me the next day and said, I feel like I just accelerated 6 months in one night. Just being able to hear the mentors debate is so incredibly valuable, and you can't replace that. There's just no way to go watch YouTube videos to get that. There are all different opinions. Hearing them debated in front of you is the magic of the conclave. The other thing that happens in the conclave is the mentors learn an awful lot from each other. So we're developing super mentors in collaborating. Right? They're great at accounting, but they never knew anything about patenting. So Renata came up to me and said, wow, that's great. I feel like I'm going to be able to add more value to my consulting clients because I heard these other things. And it's also incredibly empathetic because think about what happens. You know, you got a mentor can be belligerent sometimes. Let's just be honest, right? They can be a little arrogant about their knowledge and they could be wrong. They don't care. Now you got two mentors in the room. You can still beat them on the entrepreneur. You get to three mentors, like, okay, I gotta like act civil. I gotta be reasonable. And these are other mentors in the community that are my referral sources. So I don't want to come off like a jerk. Anytime you got to 8 mentors, it's amazing. Such an empathetic room, a good time. Everybody's learning, everybody's feeling progress. We didn't expect to see that. We didn't know what we were doing when we were experimenting. We didn't know what we were going to see, but that was the most delightful thing for me out of the whole process. Is I really look forward to these. I mean, it's a lot of work. You're getting at 5 o'clock. You're going to leave at 9 after a long day, and it's energizing. So the mentor, the quarterback, is making sure that you've got an education on everything that you need to know as a founder team before you get out there and raise capital. So we do that initial conclave that basically gave Anthony a ton of homework, but it also gave him a ton of clarity on his own business plan. But then there's going to be a final conclave. At that final conclave, we're going to be sort of preparing for the presidential debates, right? You're going to get in front of angel groups. You're going to get in front of VCs. They're going to take unfair pot shots at you. We're going to do that ahead of time so that you can be very deft in how you respond. And then we're going to give you the list of investors that we've already been soil prepping this deal with. And you're going to have instant meetings with those investors. So in many cases, they've been here visiting with the companies at Venture Mechanics ahead of time. They want to get in early and get to know the founders and watch them pivot, see how coachable they are. All these things are really, really important for ROI at the end of the day, success rates of a startup. And, you know, very often, like I was in Koretsu for years until about 15 years ago. And you got a pitch. And if you had the time, you could join the due diligence committee. But most people didn't. So 10% of the investors had done some due diligence, came out of the industry. 90% of the investors go, well, he knows biotech, and he's investing, so I'll invest. Right? That's how it works in these angel firms. So especially going to diversify your portfolio beyond a few things that you know. So the dual citizenship program is something we started first with AOA and now with E8 and Swan. We keep creating those. What does that do? So a lot of their members, so Alliance of Angels has 180 members right now, which is great. It's rocking. But when they do office hours to give the opportunity to some of their members to do mentoring, 2 people show up. So it's not really a great thing. But a lot of their members would like to mentor and see the deals earlier before they get to AOA. And so we do that with them. Create an opportunity for them to come by anytime and tell us which companies do you want to meet. We'll set up a luncheon or whatever. And they also provide speakers for a lot of our events. If you've been here, about 20% of our events are investor focused. And if you've been to those, there's always an AOA person on the investor panel, what have you. Same thing with the other groups, right? So it's an opportunity for them to improve their success rate. What we see happen all the time, about once a month, I have to call one of the groups and say, hey, there's a startup that went through your process that you really liked, and everybody liked it at the meeting, and then it all fell apart in due diligence and the deal was killed. As I can tell, it's because the proper people in your volunteer angel club, the right people were not in the room. They were on vacation. And so get it back on track. Each time I've called board members of AOA, they get it back on track. And they appreciate it. But it happens repeatedly. So it's hard to get them out to get all of them out to see all the companies. They all have busy jobs and whatnot, but there's a core group in each of these angel groups that actually does have the time and the desire to go meet with the startups. And the same thing's happening with the venture funds. We had an event up here April 2nd where 14 venture funds, micro VCs, an average of a $5 million fund. This is the new thing. There's 2 or 3 of those for every real venture fund in Silicon Valley that are technically under 100 million under management. So literally in this town, that's 95% of the capital, 95% of the transactions. And they all came up here and pitched for investors. There were investors sitting in the room. It's the first time they got a chance to hear each other's pitches. It was kind of interesting. And every one of them said, we are different. We invest in diversity. They all got to see that they were all identical. You could have called it a diversity event because every single one of these funds, and I just heard that Madrona is launching a diversity fund. Catching on. Okay, why? They want entrepreneurs to have no plan B. They want the entrepreneur that was the first in their community to go to college, start a company, build jobs, raise investment. And those entrepreneurs are incredibly driven, and they figured that out. It's born in the statistics. Also, people like Steve Jobs that were, children of immigrants and so on. There's plenty of evidence. So, as I said, the final difference is we take the companies all the way through funding while they're in the incubator. So they don't go out there in the wild. Oh, I got some training, and I've heard this. Oh man, so entrepreneurs that we loved Techstars. It was very expensive for them, but they loved it, but they never got funding, and they're still struggling to this day to get funding because they never got taught how to raise money. They got PhDs, but not in raising money. This graph puts it all together. The initial conclave in the beginning and the final conclave in the end. In between is an all-you-can-eat buffet. So as of today, you can go to venturemechanics.com and see the founder workshop series finally up. And every week, it's one of those topics. There's more that are going to be added, but that rotates every quarter. So the entrepreneur meets with their quarterback. Quarterback says, okay, you need to work on your cap table. They can wait for the course, or they can say, I don't want to wait. Put me in touch with an accountant or a lawyer or whatever specialist. You need to deal with it sooner. So they have the option. They can send other people from their team to some of these, but they're going to start with the most important stuff: customer discovery, customer acquisition strategies. They're going to end with a budget model that is completely sanity checked, that they're accounting for the right number of salespeople that it's going to take to hit these numbers, that they've got the right payroll numbers, customer acquisition costs, legal costs, automation costs for back end. Everything has been vetted and cleaned up so that the foundation of the revenue of the P&L is sound. P&L, cash flow, and balance sheet. They're going to walk out with that, and then we're going to finalize our exit strategy and figure out, okay, how big do you need to be to get acquired? Is it 5 million, 25 million, 100 million? What's the trend in your industry? What's typical? And then figure out how much money you're going to need, how many more dilutive funding rounds you're going to need to get to be that size so that you can get acquired. And we incorporate that in. Now you have the term sheet where you can stand behind the numbers. And I haven't seen that coming out of an incubator anywhere. Right? They just don't do the homework. They don't do that anymore. They did in 2009. They stopped doing it. They're going for volume, don't have time, don't have quarterbacks, basically. So those are the founder workshops. I think we might add another 1 or 2, but as you can see, they cover the major areas that most startups need the most help with. And you can hit that QR code, or you can go to the website and sign up for those. The thing about the founder workshops, you don't have to be in the incubator to take them. Most of the people in the room are probably not going to be in the incubator. So this is for the general public to come in and enjoy as well. But these are some of the best mentors that we have that are putting on these workshops. So Brooks, for example, will do everything legal together with an attorney who's going to do patenting and an attorney who's going to do software licensing. So since at least software licensing is something almost every single company, unless they're in apparel or something, is going to be doing. So those are open to the public. All right, what's the application process? So we have a quick meeting with the founders, kind of figure out where they're at. Does it sound? First of all, in order to get into the incubator, you gotta quit your day job. We're not taking any companies in where at least the CEO hasn't taken the day job, or has retained their day job. So, what happens if they run out of cash and the CEO has to go get a day job? That's okay. That's why we don't have an ending term. We know life happens. Babies are born, right? Mortgages go upside down, whatever. We recognize that. And so they can stay in the incubator as long as it's necessary. And if they slow down for a while, that's okay. But at least going in, they've got to be at least the CEO, and it's usually just the CEO when they're coming in. The rest are still holding on to their day jobs until they have some funding, is working with us full time. And we sent them a business plan template. This is a deck that I developed together with Sequoia back in 1999. And so if you Google Sequoia business plan template, it's still there. I've modified it a bit since then. They kind of left it static, but basically every slide in that deck is a question. What are your per customer economics? How far is your technology? And so forth. And we give that to the founders and say, okay, answer it as best as you can, send it back. Look at that. If it looks like, okay, this is interesting enough, we'll have a meeting, probably 2 or 3 hours, where we're sitting there going slide by slide. This, by the way, is the same thing that happens in the mentor conclave. This deck is a living document. It's in your deal room, which is established on Spark XYZ immediately when you come in, and you're constantly updating it. When you've answered all the questions, when you've replaced all the slides that had questions with answers, you are ready to go fundraising. Very simple. So that's the application process. With the program costs, well, we have a 6-month minimum term on it. That includes the initial conclave and the final conclave and all you can eat buffet of direct mentorship and the weekly meetings, founder workshops. And at the moment, we're still heavily subsidizing this. It's not 100,000 or 125,000 as you would see from the big incubators. Right now it's $6K for 6 months, so $1K a month. Now that number will go up over time as we fill up. We're challenging our capacity, but right now we just want to fill the pipeline. So on August 1st, that will go up. But that's what it is. So that's the basic program. All that mentorship is covered in that. And honestly, folks that kind of pays a portion of the rent and food at the meetings and stuff, that's not the big deal for us. We also don't take equity up front, any equity up front. We only get equity if we get the company funded. The way we do it is a heck of a lot more founder friendly and frankly investor friendly, because investors, it chaps their hide when they hear you gave up 10% of your company to be in an incubator for 90 days. It quickly chaps the hide of the founders that find out, oh, by doing that, I did not automatically get funded. Find that out and go do another one and another one, and they're taking big chunks. Sometimes they're throwing in cash on top, but at relatively low valuation, you're giving up quite a bit. So the way we do it is with a registered broker-dealer. Now, if you know anything about RBDs, are there any registered broker-dealers in the room? No? We're out there. Troy, AJ. So registered broker-dealer has economics. To make a living, they got to have large deals. Pre-seed and seed rounds are not large deals. They take an enormous amount of work. They're very risky. And the compliance around doing this is crazy. What the SEC puts these brokers through is crazy, especially in the context of a very small round. But we are going out to these RBDs and saying, listen, we're handing you a completely prepped CEO, a finished deal room. You have no work to do, no retainer needed. It's all done. The book is ready. We've already introduced them to the investors. We just need a legitimate registered broker-dealer to do all the compliance and basically invoice. The 5% fee that we take, finder's fee, on the investors we bring in, and a half of 1% to cover their administrative costs on any investors that came in outside of venture mechanics. And that we take 50-50 cash and equity. So we end up with less than 1% of the rent less than 1% of the company, not 6 to 20%, which is typical. But why is that sufficient? Because we expect every one of these companies to succeed. It's not a numbers game for us. I, as a 10-time founder, hated being looked at by VCs and thinking, well, maybe you'll be 1 out of 20 that it's really big. Maybe you'll be 1 out of 5 in our portfolio that has an exit, and the rest, well, it's a numbers. To me, there was never a numbers game. It was all my right? The mortgage job, but no income for a year, all that stuff. So if you catch a drift here, if we find entrepreneurs that are totally committed and they've got a good business plan and a good team, we'll invest that time in them for what we consider to be a very decent piece of equity that keeps us in the game with these guys. But there's another very important part of this, which is that the day you get that phone call, I've exited 4 companies, and the last one was during the COVID economy, the pandemic economy, and so I all of a sudden pandemic hits, our sales go 5x. We were across the street from that building. Sales go 5x overnight. Oh my God, keeping the wheels on the bus. Factories in Michigan are shut down. We can't have more than 1 employee in the building at a time. We had 3 locations here. And so the first thing I did was, this was a dance studio, and we gutted it to the beams and rebuilt it. We had no idea how far this was going to go. Every month, sales were just screaming. We were making standing desks. All the furniture in here is iMover. Standing desks, treadmill desks, sit-stand meeting tables, and Google sending out emails to employees saying, "Oh, get your iMover standing desk. We'll pay for it. Here's the coupon code." Oh my God. Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it, right? Supply chain nightmares. Nightmares. Couldn't get it. Treadmills on the ship for 3 months at a time coming out of Taichung. And we'd already shipped it to Europe from China years earlier for everything else. But oh my God, it was the same problem. Couldn't get a container in Hamburg to pull in product from Austria and Germany and other countries where our suppliers came. So all of a sudden, as business out of control, making huge profit. It's great. We decided to pay off our debts, buy out shareholders. Crazy. Didn't anticipate. Oh, here comes the reversal of the pandemic economy. But the first calls I got in the very beginning were companies like Steelcase and Herman Miller going, our stock's in the toilet. Wall Street thinks we have no work from home strategy, and people are going to be working from home for a while, so we want to buy it. So what do? I'm busy, by the way, trying to keep the wheels on the bus. I call investment bankers. I call people like Troy. They say, "Hey, can you take me?" All right. I got inquiries, and we need to create a heated bidding event. And they go, "Well, you're not in our sector." It's the most common question. Answer you're going to get. And then if you are in our sector, we don't have any time. We're busy with other deals right now. You'll have to wait till we're done with these deals, because a typical M&A deal is a year process from beginning to end.
6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months in your case, because Evolution Capital is better than the others. But the process typically, at least with the management team, even before they engage the professionals, it's a year to go through that process. Well, we went out and they go, "Hey, this is great. We're going to buy you right away." And then, in the news, remember the variants? Remember Alpha, Delta, right? So it went like this. Vaccine news. Oh yeah, everybody's gonna go back to the office. Remember that? Like January 1st, 2021, everybody was going to be back in the office. Every single manufacturer in Michigan, which is, by the way, where 90% of your office furniture is made, Western Michigan, Republican, believed that this thing was going to be over by January 1st, because somebody told them that. And so then they go, "Oh, no, that's off. Looks like we're going to, there's a vaccine coming out. Everybody's going to go back to work." And then the variant comes out, and think, "Oh, geez, hey, can we get the bankers back online? We really want to do this." And it was just this kind of cycle back and forth with, "Oh boy, we just laid off thousands of people and closed a bunch of factories, so we're not ready to talk to you now. Can you come back in 6 months?" And this was just jerking us back and forth with our bankers. But the point is of that whole story, and it ended with a fire sale, right, to be honest, back in June. The time that it took from, I was running a company for 10 days, heads down, growing 40% a year, virtually no funding from the beginning. We just used dead. And the time I got the first phone call, oh, hey, are you guys for sale? To when I actually had somebody engaged was 4 months, because I didn't have someone on speed dial. So we want to make sure that our startups have a relationship with an RBD, so that if they get, oh wow, we just knocked out this incredible customer deal, and we're ready to go raise our A round, and they want to use registered broker dealer to help them do that because it's big enough, $10 million round or whatever, that they already have a relationship. And they can always call us and say, hey, tell me the latest on this company, because we keep tabs on everything. So that's really important. And then when they get the call, hey, are you guys for sale? Again, speed dial, already know the broker dealer, already know they like our company. They know our investors. It's going to go a hell of a lot faster and significantly increase the odds of an exit. This is where it breaks down for a lot of startups that don't get their exits, is actually timing of working with the M&A people. So we learned that the hard way. And this is something that we're still putting in place. I want to be clear, it's not in place today, and we may have more than one RBD, but we're getting very close. So, tired of hearing from me? Let's have you hear from Anthony Hanses. Anthony was our first guinea pig. Take it away.
I'm a frequently very drunk guinea pig, but that's a different story. I was blessed. I met Ron a couple years ago through a event we both went to as part of 601 Club and WTIA, and it's some VR stuff in Seattle. As things progressed, my company did a lot worse than his that I was working at, and in February this year, we ended up not with jobs, in a very bad tech environment. So 3 of us who had worked at that company for about 3 years were like, let's do our own startup. So we started working on that. But as a lot of people in our area are, we're all very tech. And I knew right away, I don't know what even a term sheet is. I didn't know half of the stuff that I would need to do, but I knew that I didn't know it. So I reached out to Ron. It was half the sense, actually. He pinged me just randomly about like my old company and if we were doing anything that might be able to help him with. And I was like, no, not there anymore. But I started my own startup. He's like, get over here now. We need to talk. And we sat in one of the conference rooms back there for almost 3 hours chatting about it. And I was just honest. I'm like, I don't know the business side. That's what I'm most worried about. And that's when we started the relationship towards building the incubator. And he really helped me understand the basics at first and kept growing and growing and growing, having me attend some of the early events here and continuing to develop and understand. Well, we did what most tech people do, which was build a product before we talked with our customers. Then he started teaching me, now talk to your customers. And like a lot of people, I started going off in 100 different directions. I came with a great pitch, and then each customer was yanking me this way and yanking me that way and yanking me every other way with various ideas of where my business could go to just serve them rather than to serve the business and other opportunities. And that was when we really started to kick off the incubator and go, let's ground this a bit. I met Brooks here, got hooked up with Light Legal, did some of the legal work I needed to do in order to be able to start getting our app more broadly out there properly. Ron set up the conclave, which when he says it accelerates you 6 months, I would say for my case, it's accelerated me infinity because I was yanked in so many directions. If you had seen a couple of my recent pitches, they were all over the fucking place. Pardon my language. And now we're re-grounded. I met wonderful people like Brian. Greta was remotely and on a call with us. Multiple other brand managers and other people that were in the room. We had 11 people all looking at the business plan that I had drafted in coordination with the incubator and helping me refine it and build it and understand. Okay, rather than looking at 100 different markets that I was at and worried about picking the wrong one, let's instead focus on figure out 1 or 2 that could be the right ones based on everybody's experience and what they were bringing to the table. And just having them all talk amongst each other. When I would put up a slide and they go, oh, that's an interesting idea. Now let's have a conversation. And I was just able to listen and ingest. And then they'd ask me a follow-up question. And I'd reply. And then I would ask them questions back about my concerns about that market or how I would talk with people Or my plans to I was planning to hold like a 12-person thing at Columbia Tower Club and bring in a whole bunch of CMOs and talk to them. And they're like, no, don't do that. One-on-one. We want one-on-one relationships with all of these people. And helping me refine that and grow it and build a better plan was what I needed. And that's what the incubator is doing for me. On top of that, I looked at Techstars before they crashed. And 8%, I think, was what I had seen, but I could see it go much higher. And I was like, giving up my company and I can't do the 90 days dedicated with my entire team on site, that's just not going to work. Whereas the flexibility here and how it's been able to flow with the fact that, well, I've been able to work full time on this startup. My CTO is working a 40-hour-a-week job. My product and design person just had a baby and just started a full-time job with Oracle. So getting the time out of them is much lower than what I've been able to commit. But we've been slowly able to go, and I'm able to thus commit to a lot more of the stuff for the incubator. But yeah, the conclave super accelerated me. We now have 2 focus groups. I've got Brian here as a great mentor. I've got Greta as a mentor, a couple others as well that we're talking with, and starting to...
Can you take a minute to tell them what your company does?
Oh, yeah. So that's a name that's changing because that also came out of the conclave. We're going to be rebranding to mixtails.ai instead of currently alcohol.ai, because we do cocktails and mocktails. And we're an AI-powered application that protects both us and our business partners in B2B. So you can't come to our app and ask for a cocktail that would mask the taste of bleach or hide a roofie or help you commit suicide. As horrible as that may be, people do this kind of thing with AI. Or like any of those other things. On top of that, mocktails specifically are about a third of our current user base. We have about 200 to 300 weekly users right now, and about a third of the drinks coming through that we see in our app are mocktails, because the young group is they're obsessed with being sober or infusing stuff with THC. So we're fine with either of those two, but there's no really good recipes out there. You can't go and buy a bar book with 10,000 recipes for mocktails or THC infused drinks like you can for alcohol. And balancing those drinks is not something anybody's really come up with a solution to yet, whereas AI can actually bring all the lessons from alcohol, as weird as it may sound, and apply that to mocktails and THC infused drinks. So we're bringing that to the masses. Now, who's our client? Our client is business, right? Specifically affiliate and finder fee deals with distributors. You're thinking liquor.com, Bevmo, Curiata, or even more local ones like Total Wine and more, helping them get more users into their business at least from my experience in search, over $200 just for a click that may bring a sale. They're willing to pay. So bring that in, and now we're working to validate that through interviews, that they're actually, this type model will work just like search would for them. And then eventually evolving into partnering with the manufacturers like Seagram's, Hennessy, many others, Jack Daniels, you name them, to basically think about baseball before Moneyball happened. No one cared about data. They thought they knew all the answers. Who needs data? Then one team brought data in and won the World Series from one of the worst teams in the league to the best in 2 years. We're aiming to do the same for the liquor industry eventually.
I got to cut you off.
Yep.
But Greta, someone I met at Karetsu many years ago, consumer packaged goods queen.
Yes.
And she dialed in from Pittsburgh, but she was currently doing research for a liquor company. And as she explained to us in the conclave, we all learned 3-tier distribution industry, very wealthy company at the top, 0 data on their customers, and the value of all the recipe volume going through your app. Greta helped us all divine that probably the most lucrative revenue channel was going to be to sell that data to these big liquor companies that could affect their spend in every channel. So thank you very much, Anthony.
Just one last thing I want to add on. You specifically called out mentors mentoring each other at the conclave events, and I saw that in real time with that. When she mentioned that only 20% of the liquor sales were to like bars and stuff, and 80% were direct to consumer, other mentors in the room lit up, and it started like a 30-minute conversation where everybody was like, oh, that completely changes how this could work. And everybody started then bringing their experience with this new piece of data to bear. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony.
Well, I've been working with your team.
So I'm going to call Brian up here. So Brian will tell you he's already had an exit. He's now on number 2. And he also was interested in mentoring. And so I said, well, you're going to be the second company going through the incubator. So why don't you come in and be a mentor in Anthony's conclave? And we got to learn all about his incredible brain on big data and AI. And that was another aspect that had come out in the conclave for Anthony's company. That was just fascinating. So get to hear from both sides. One guy.
Yeah, let me tell you how I got here. So thank you, Ron. As Ronnie said, I had a chance before to previous startup. I exited to Nordstrom. I had a chance to join their executive team, and then I got a chance to run their CTO rack role, and there's a lot of the technology and everything that powers that whole machine. Now I'm working on Mozart, my next startup. I'm focusing on all the content creation needs that a website like Nordstrom and all their peers have, especially when they need content that across their website, across their emails and ad channels for each one of their products and each one of the customer needs that they might have for each one of their products. So the needs for content are super large, and kind of generative AI is now allowing us to automate a lot of these processes while still keeping a lot of the control, so you can control your brand, what is being said on your behalf through all these channels at a very large scale. So that's what I'm working on. But what brings me here today is a little bit more about mentorship. I'm a founder that has had to raise funds. I'm a Black founder. I'm originally from South America, Latin America, so it's the expansion. I'm a Latin also founder. And there's a lot of dynamics that play around, especially how your network works and how do you actually connect across the industry in different fields. How do you actually connect with investors? What are investors trying to find out when you're trying to do some pattern matching at the beginning? I had the luck of working for Microsoft, like probably a lot of you work for very large companies in the area. So you get a lot of the badge of, I think I know what I'm doing in the terms of technical aspect, but that very first entrepreneur path is riddled with a lot of challenges that have nothing to do with your day job, what you used to do, what you were really good at, especially in technology and products, when you reach over to the business side or vice versa. So for me, what I found about this experience is that it's not obvious, like everybody says, it's extremely complex. And now that I've been through it in a successful way, and I know how the steps that you have to go through, and kind of all the things that have to go right for you to get to the end, the acquisition is an end. Anyway. I want to make sure that I give back a lot to the community. So while I was at Nordstrom, I had a lot of big platforms to be able to give back, especially the organizations and large organizations that I got to chair. But since I left Nordstrom, kind of that influence kind of stayed with that role. And now I'm back into my entrepreneurship community that's a much smaller group with very little reach, especially as a founder when my reach is very limited. So for me, the kind of events that I got involved here was through the Black founders community, especially in the East Side. I'm an East Sider as well, so it's super convenient enough to go to Seattle, where I met Brad the first time with that Neotech with my previous startup. And what I'm really excited is about contributing back, not only contributing to the community as a poster child of success, and everybody else just do it. I was just a lucky one that was there at that time. But I also want to be able to give back and actually share some of the stories. There's a lot of war stories and scars that I have that I'm not going to be able to leverage again, because the situation will never show up again because I'm in a different stage, or because my reality will be different this time around. But if you can get some benefit from that, for me, that sounds a lot of paying back in a way that I got a lot of benefit from people that I have no clue. I read their stuff sometimes. So I invite you to be part of a community that helps a lot and minimizes the risk. And if I can help in any way, just please reach out to me, connect with me. I'm going to be back there also talking about my startup if you want to connect further. Thank you.
Yeah. So Brian's conclave is June 27th. I know there's a lot of mentors in the room. And if you haven't yet signed up using the form on the mentor program page, come talk to me if you'd like to participate in Brian's conclave. The way we do that is I sat down with Brian and figure out, okay, what are the specialists that we need the most? And we create slots. Out of the 15 seats, we create slots. B2B SaaS sales is going to be the number one thing. Number 2, 3, 4, whatever. And then we always open up lots of generic slots. So I think we have 5 or 6 generic slots. because lots of entrepreneurs have extremely broad experience. Mentors have extremely broad experience. But we also want to open up those slots to new mentors so they can learn. They can begin. We're cranking out mentors, and we're helping venture funds raise capital, and we're helping startups raise capital. It's an ecosystem, and we're touching all the pieces of it at the same time. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Doc Montgomery, who changed everything here when we met. When did we meet? October? Last June?
Last June before it was at the same time that I met Brett.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon? No, that was I met Ron before then. Yeah, we connected on flying.
He's getting his pilot's license now, which, by the way, is a requirement of everybody who walked in the building. Who doesn't have their pilot's license yet? Okay, we can help you with that. Jamar's day job and his wife's is at Boeing, but there's so much to this guy. You want me to say it, or you want?
It always sounds better when you say it.
Okay, all right. So Jamar is your classic underachiever. Went to college at 14, got a mechanical engineering degree, eventually a law degree, an MBA, was a criminal defense attorney, professor of political science, ran for the U.S. Senate in 2020, worked on Navy ships for the DoD on weapon systems. Back in the military aviation now after getting a new job last week, and has his own startup company, Flash Your.
It's all good. That's why I came in. That's where I came in. So yes, thank you, Ron.
Anyway, he's a genius. He's a super mentor. He helped us figure out the whole conclave process. Your batteries just go to bigger.
All right. So yes. Hello, everyone. Jamar Doc Montgomery here. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and it has been an incredible journey doing this with Ron since the moment that he started Venture Mechanics, and this actually being a place for diverse founders. Well, when I stepped in, it was, I was new to the Seattle area, and I had only been here by that time, maybe about 7-8 months. So, I work for Boeing, but there's no energy like startup energy. There's no energy like founder energy. There's nothing like it. And being able to be in a place like Venture Mechanics, where there were just so many founders, so many people in the venture capital community that were coming here, and this was a place that was very welcoming. And as a result, I told Ron, I said, man, this is you got gold here. That people are looking for a place to come so that they can be around others, other founders, other funders, and be encouraged and also help build their network. I never knew that a few months later that we would be working on, the Summit for Underrepresented Founders that we hosted in January 29th, a week after I had just gotten back from Davos during the World Economic Forum. But out of that conversation also, we saw the need for all these different diverse groups. And out of that, the Black Founders and Funders group was created. We had our next meeting that February. We had our first meeting that February, and we've been bringing in speakers ever since. So helping to
hang on, Jamar, I got to just correct the record slightly. Black Founders and Funders had its first meeting in January. There were 24 members, and it was when the group got up on stage and told this incredibly diverse audience about what happened there. I met this guy, Evan, who was starting an angel network for Black investors. And I said, I got 5 Black entrepreneurs sitting here right now. You're kidding. I got to meet them right away. By the time we met, there were 17. And then there were 24 at the first meeting. There are now 145 in that group in the span of 6 months. But January 29th was the day that changed the world because people were here till 2 in the morning. We had, I know that the Walkishes are here somewhere, right? And you had some of your indigenous people coming from like Oregon and BC, right? It was amazing. The energy was amazing. And I got calls the next morning. Hey, can you do the same thing for our Filipino founders? And that group launches, the Filipino founders launches here tomorrow, right? The women's group, all these different groups that all came from that one meeting where Jamar was sharing one of the two panels.
Yes, so thank you, Ron. Absolutely correct. We had our first meeting in January, and yes, got on stage. And when we did that, that just unleashed everything. So now, Ron has always been like, "Hey, man, so what are you going to be doing with your watches?" Well, I don't know. I like watches. I enjoy it. He's like, "Man, you really need to take this seriously." I said, "Okay, all right." So these are some of my watches. I feel like a 4-year-old on stage, right? Hey, this is what I made. You know what I mean? But now it's seeing, okay, this is what it takes in order to become a venture grade startup. This is the network that you need. This is the community that you need in order to be successful. And as we know, we all know the statistics. What 50%, is it 50 or 80% of all startups fail within the first 5 years?
That's restaurant.
Oh, excuse me.
Higher than that.
So the statistics have gotten worse. The statistics have gotten worse when I was on my MBA class. But being able to help bring my skill set, as Ron said, to help other founders. I'm the kind of guy that if you give me the destination, I can start helping you plan all the way back to where you are right now. That's my superpower. And now being in a position to be able to apply that superpower to my own startup is something that's very exciting. But it's a lot more comforting knowing that I have the support of the people in this room. And as all of us know that when you're starting your first venture or you're starting your 10th venture, that the more support that you have, the greater chances of success that you have. So I encourage everyone to be a part of this incubator and also become a part of this community.
Have graphics. Fancy automation. Ah, shoot. Okay.
You're a room full of innovators. Everybody, imagine.
All right. Thank you, Jamar. Thank you for everything that you've done here. You left out the part about where you said something to me how you saw venture mechanics being invited to diversity. And we didn't know it yet. We thought maybe it was an anomaly, but it turned out to be a reality. That a microphone here. Okay, yeah. That became a reality, and so with the Black Founders and Funders group, it's been amazing. Jamar does the fireside chats with these incredible people right here in this community that have done absolutely incredible things, but they're not household names. Black boys and girls do not hear about anything, but you also told me this, Jamar, that it's always celebrities or athletes, right? Where's the Black Steve Jobs? It turned out there's several of them right here in this town. And they come in and speak to us, and then they hang out the entire night and meet with every single entrepreneur, and then turn to me and say, "Never believed you could have done this in this town."
Well, I have one more thing. The challenge is that getting people to know about your startup. And it's frustrating as a Black founder that they only look at celebrities and athletes. Why? Because they have the eyes on them. So it's very discouraging to people who have great ideas, great business models. They cannot get the visibility of the athletes and entertainers. So one of the things that I'm really thankful for Ron for is creating a space for us to be able to have our meetings here and also gain more visibility to these great founders and these great companies that they're building.
Yeah, and so now, just give an example here. So tomorrow, as I said, the Filipino Founders and Funders, I think there's 3 investment funds that are on that advisory committee, steering committee, whatever you want to call it. We try to give them all the tools that they need so they don't have to go raise capital and create a 501c3 and all that kind of stuff. We'll do that down the road, but right now we give them the HubSpot account, give them space on our website. They leverage our communications bullhorn to the whole community. And it's amazing how many Filipino founders are coming out to this meeting. Well, I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow, because it's going to be a repeat where we had 24th first Black Founders and Funders meeting, and there were 2 people who grew up here in Seattle that looked at each other and said, never seen this many Black people outside the church in the room in Seattle, much less tech founders. And there were 3 investors in that group. Out of the 140, I'd say 20 or more are actually investors as well, right? And they started coming to us and saying, hey, we're Tacoma Venture Fund. We are looking for gender and BIPOC. We're sector agnostic, right? $20 million fund. Can we come to your meetings? We want to meet these people. We want to meet them casually and develop that social bond first. So it's been terrific. We get two entrepreneurs to get up, or 3 entrepreneurs to get up at each meeting after the keynote speaker, and then we get a couple of funds to get up and talk about what they're doing. So yes, there are some that are just looking for Black founders or just Filipino founders. Most are all the way across DEI. There are some funds that are just for women. But these are their 2 groups we have in development right now: women's group, veterans group, LGBTQ, Latino, and Indigenous, with our friends Waukesha's here. The graphic that's not showing is the 3rd summit for underrepresented founders. And my favorite story from last week was Chris Mandarino. How many of you know Chris Mandarino? A few. Okay. So on board of the WTIA, had an amazing career at Microsoft and Expedia, 4 startups, 4 exits. Now she invests in venture funds, but she runs the Amelia Network, and she dedicates half her time to women and half her time to DEI. And she told me the story last week that I had not heard before, which was that somebody at random, I think it was Catherine, told her about the event. And she never crosses the bridges. She lives in West Seattle, never crosses the bridges. And she didn't want to go to one more. So for 10 years, she's been going to events for underrepresented founders, and it's like 5 or 10% of the room. And she came here and she saw a room full of underrepresented founders, or a few old white guys there, but it was every color, every stripe. And she's never left. And so now she's the co-chair with Jamar for the gender panel. And we're building this women's group together. So I invite you to come on July 29th. That'll be the 3rd summit. It is the jamboree of all the DEI groups, with one's already formed and one's forming. Yeah. It should be on our site. DJ, it's not on our site.
Yeah, 25th.
Is it the 20? Oh, it moved to the 25th. That was my typo. I'm sorry. We had to move it. And the reason we had to move it was because of Tech Week. And what we learned with AI Week is they go gonzo and have 50 events, and too few people show up at any event. So we literally had to move out of AI Week. And we're going to move, we had to move out of Tech Week. So thank you for pointing that out. It is July 25th. All right. Or event types. DJ, what's going on with the graphics here?
Refresh the browser.
Refresh the browser. The old tech support, fall back. How do I do that on this computer? If I don't seem to be doing nothing. Okay, it's TJ's computer. I'm going to let him do that. All right, so we got a whole bunch of groups that hadn't had a place to do an event on the east side since COVID shut down so many locations where they used to happen. There we go. That's or the venues that they had were noisy bars or nightclubs or whatever, and the sponsors didn't like that because they couldn't build any relationships. A bunch of inebriated people running around. Not that we don't serve drinks, but we are very careful how we control that. We want people to have a really good experience here, and so Founders Live moved in here. How many people were at Founders Live First East Side chapter? Just a few of you. Okay, you got to come to the next one then. That's pretty cool. It's a 99-second pitch format. Brett runs New Tech East Side, as I mentioned earlier. He's going to come up in a little bit. But that group is 8-minute pitch format. I think Jenny and Darian Wolf did it, right? And then we've got, I'm going to talk about the other 2 in a moment, but we have all kinds of events here, venture competitions, where you're on stage for 28 minutes, 12-minute pitch, 8 minutes Q&A with best investor panel, 8 minutes Q&A with LPs in the audience. The point is, we create, and it's part of the incubator program, we create many opportunities for the entrepreneurs to practice pitching different lengths because that it's always tricky. You have to make that adjustment. So on venture weekend on June 1st and 2nd, you had to get up and do a 5-minute pitch, and the next day, low stakes pitch, the panel was startup coaches. The second day, you moved on to investor day on venture weekend and had to be a 10-minute pitch. And this guy hit it within like seconds. And that's because he's practiced so many times at different formats that the content is now second nature. And did you prep much? Yeah, you didn't have to anymore. Right? You've already done this so many times. So that's an important part of the formula here is creating events where they can go up and pitch. And that could be at a diversity group. It could be at one of these two. But I'm really excited about Seattle Startup Friends. Daniel is here. Daniel Bolas created with Mohammed and the two other partners created Seattle Startup Friends. How long ago? 2.5 years. Okay. Anybody been to a Seattle Startup Friends meeting? That's how you met Joel. Okay, cool. So now the Fremont and Capitol Hill chapters do meet in bars still. And out here, they were meeting at Mock's boarding house. And eventually the group got so big that they weren't in the room where they serve food and beer anymore. So they said, well, if they can't get food and beer, might as well have them come over here. So we moved it over here. What's great at Seattle Startup Friends is people come in there with an idea. You know, they still work at Microsoft. They have an idea. Is this idea any good? They want some peer review. They want some low stakes peer review. And they just sit around the table and they get feedback on their idea. They go to the next table. They get some feedback from some other people. It's loud because everybody is exchanging ideas. Amazing. But this is where the raw idea founder gets sent, right? They come to us. Oh, can I go in your incubator? Tell me about your idea. Well, I don't have a revenue model figured out yet, and I haven't done any customer discovery, but I built the prototype. Okay, come to Seattle Startup Friends. We're going to help you with those other things, or quite frankly, we shoot a lot of ideas dead, and they're very, very appreciative of being informed that no, you can't scrape somebody's website, their copyrighted material, and turn around and sell them. Single copyright law. So SSF happens every 2 weeks here. And then the alternating Thursday nights is Founders Dojo. Founders Dojo is an offshoot of Founders Therapy, which we had a few of to experiment and love the formats. What happens at Founder Dojo is up to 10 or 12 entrepreneurs in the room. They have to be founders, not CEOs. These are the founders. And they come to talk about usually stuff they're trying to figure out. I can't figure out my go-to-market strategy. I have several different ideas. It's a peer review. I can't figure out how to negotiate equity with my co-founder. Could be stuff that you can't talk to your co-founder about, your investors, your board members, your employees. You can't talk to your spouse about it, or they might say, why don't you go back to Microsoft and make a living again? Right? So Founder Dojo is a safe place, and we implant people like Darian over here, senseis, seasoned travelers, been down this path a few times. Darian's on his 4th startup, so we let them figure it out, and then eventually chime in with a few more pro hands from the veterans. But the subtle thing that happens there is that they develop friendships with other founders that they can pick up the phone and call for the rest of their lives whenever they have those kinds of events. That's our goal, is that they develop those friendships. They left Microsoft, never did a startup, don't know anybody that does startups. They came here from a foreign country typically, right? And they just don't have a network. And we want them to develop those connections. Those are your best and cheapest advisors. And if they're not ready for the incubator program yet, that's where we send them every other Thursday, alternating with Seattle Startup Friends, and some come to both. But there's a plush toy over there in the conference room, and each founder gets to hold that toy for 15 minutes and talk about their home. So the whole room. So at SSF, it's crosstalk. It's crosstalk. Everybody's having a great time and talking about all kinds of ideas. But at Founders Dojo, it's very respectful. One founder goes at a time, and anything goes. When we called it Founder Therapy, unfortunately, we didn't have a therapist on hand. And we had to change the name because no, we don't actually have any licensed counselors here. It's not about that. you're a little more focused. But anyhow, hope you can join us. The first one is on June 18th. July 18th. Again, typos. Of course, I did my deck 2 hours before you guys got here, so lots of mistakes. Okay, Brett, come on up here. Many of you know that Brett is ADHD counselor for the tech community, and we've been wanting to do this event for a long time. So also on July 18th, turns out it was big.
I'll be quick. Yeah, so I've been mentoring, coaching, advising startups since 2006 with the very first 3 years of Techstars companies in Boulder, Colorado. And so I have this weird vector of coach training, master's degree in psychology, and ended up around startup communities when startup first became a word, and put that all together. Realized I thought I liked smart, fun, creative people. Turns out most of us are neurodivergent, and a shit ton of us are in the tech industry. So statistically, if you're neurodivergent or have ADHD, you're 300 times more likely to be an entrepreneur. And at least 30% of entrepreneurs have ADHD. 85% of neurodivergent people are undiagnosed. So usually you hear about it or read it and go, oh my God, this explains all the stuff I didn't understand about why I did things. And people thought I was smart, but I did dumb things. And people thought it was weird. And I had all these ideas they didn't get. And it's a lot of founders and investors. I've talked to a lot of investors that said, we have companies that would have survived if we had known the founders were neurodivergent. We realized in hindsight that one or more of the co-founders were neurodivergent and we didn't know how to support them. So you may or may not, this could be Greek to you. Most people, if you haven't been diagnosed with ADHD or autism or something, you've never heard the term neurodivergent. But once bugged me in a loving way for a long time to do this, because there are so many people in our community that I work with and train with some companies. Understanding is to create systems in their companies to support the neurodivergent people in the neurotypical systems that we have. And that's why we're doing this.
Brett had to train me like a new puppy to stop saying coping with ADHD and say leveraging, which I'm learning. But I didn't know. I had CTO and a VP of engineering who were definitely neurodivergent. Brilliant guys. But oh my God, the HR personnel problems. I didn't know. Nobody ever taught me. This was not in startup school. This wasn't in Carnegie Mellon engineering school either. I had absolutely no idea. But as a CEO, I better learn how to do that. Now, it could be the CEO that has neurodivergent background and they need to know how to manage it themselves. It could be people on their team and they need to figure out how to pair people up properly, get the detail-oriented person together with the ADHD person and team. My wife is a pediatrician. She does the same thing. That was the funny thing. She was the one that was encouraging to do this program with Brad because we, pediatrics, you can catch it early. But 85% undiagnosed. So we saw it the first week we opened the doors and we realized, oh my God, 30% of these people cannot tell their story.
1 in 3 people are neurodivergent, even though 85% don't know. So 1 in 3 people in this room. But
can you tell us which one? We have a winner. Okay. That means for everyone, hand that went up, there were 2 that did not go up. Yeah. But we noticed that. TJ and I noticed that. I was like, oh my God, some of these people can't, 20 minutes and they still can't tell us what their business. No, you were never that bad. I didn't even know you were neurodivergent. She said she is. I don't know. Because you're diagnosed and you have friends like Brad. That's right. Medications help too. Anyway, the other thing I want to tell you about is Top Gun for Startups, which I've been doing for 24 years under the title Everything I Learned About Entrepreneurship from my flight instructor. Thank you, Charles. so the three of us, between us, have something like 80 years in the cockpit, I think, 40 for me. These two guys were flying way higher speeds and being shot at the same time. So I'm a general aviation pilot. These two guys were Navy test pilots. And but we're all entrepreneurs, and we met one day at an event, and I started talking about this workshop that I give, and Ron Hayes goes, "Oh, hey, I just wrote a chapter in a book about that." And it was the same thing. I sent him my deck. He sent me his book. Oh my God, we're saying the same things to people and teaching. It was the third one to jump in, and so I highly recommend it. We messed up our messaging last time we did this, and people thought they had to be a pilot to be there. Half the room was pilots. It did attract all of them out. And if you look around the building, you see the aviation team. It's all over the place because I've been doing it for 40 years. My first two companies were aviation companies, and it's so fun being back with new aviation companies again. We do like aerospace deals here a lot, but it's not about it. It's about being able to handle the incredibly stressful moments in between, right? We say, aviation is hours of sheer boredom interspersed with moments of sheer terror. And I have found that running startups for the last 40 years is very, very similar. So highly recommend. It's a lot of fun. Come to that one. And again, a big thanks to our sponsors who've made this whole thing possible. Down for Shane. Okay. The program is over. You are here, and behind this wall is where the mentors are going to go. And then that room where we were all at in the beginning is where the booths are. And Brian and Anthony also have their companies there, so you can ask them questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great time.